Hello. The last video cut off abruptly because that video was originally over 20 minutes long. And because it was so long, I actually watched it and found the last 15 minutes to be a little deficient. And so I just trimmed those 15 minutes off and decided to redo it. And then I redid the next portion and even watched that and didn't like it. And I think the reason why I don't like it is mainly because of the topic is a little delicate. So this will be my third attempt at this portion of the essay. Now, I actually went back and read the essay and decided I didn't like some of the essay, so I'm not going to read some of it. But I'd like to start this video by just talking into the camera here. Here's a question to consider. So suppose you take your hand, one hand, and with the other hand you pinch yourself really hard, and consider the question, where is the pain occurring? Yeah? Where is this pain occurring? So if you say the pain is occurring where you're pinching it, I would say that's incorrect. I would say that answer is akin to saying that when one looks in the mirror, I am in the mirror. Yeah? It's being fooled by appearances, such as like flat earthers, I think, look at the horizon and say, oh, the whole thing's flat, and so I'm looking to the end. So that's being fooled by appearances. And yet we know, just scientifically, or just if we think about things logically enough and understand some of the mathematics and so on, that the Earth is curving downward and away and around, so that it forms a sphere, or not an exact sphere, but something close to a ball. And so, again, when we pinch ourselves really hard and we're considering the question of where's this pain, when we think the pain is there, we're going by appearances. But in fact, that's not correct, yeah? Because when we pinch here, we know that there are nerves growing here. And suppose that someone were to develop as a human being with no nerves in their hands, then such a person could drive a nail right through their hand without experiencing any sensation of pain. I mean, they might bleed, but there would be no sensation of pain because the nerves have to be in the place where we're piercing. So what we know is that when we pinch here, we're pinching on some nerves, and those nerves are sending a signal down a bunch of nerves all the way to our brain. The brain then reconstructs or constructs the sensation of pain, and then it takes that sensation of pain and projects it out to the exact location where we're pinching. So we have an experience or the appearance of pain occurring where we're pinching, when in fact that pain isn't occurring right here. It's occurring in the brain. And I'm going to use the word mind to denote something larger. I'm going to use the word mind to denote something closer to our concept of consciousness. So this pain isn't so much occurring in the body, it's occurring in mind. But again, there's an appearance of the pain occurring here. Now, I'm not denying that the body is suffering, that there's some kind of suffering. I'm not trying to deny the realities of the body, but I'm trying to locate the actual sort of the core experience of where it's happening, and that's occurring in the mind. Similarly, we can say that right now, each of you who is actually watching this video, like assuming that you're not just listening to it on audio while you're taking a walk, if you're looking at this video, you're all looking at some kind of a screen, and in that screen you see me. And so we might say you're looking at a screen and you're looking at an image of me. But I would say that's also not entirely correct. There's an appearance of a screen, and there's an appearance of sound coming from your screen, of my voice, and you might even touch the screen to say, no, the screen exists, don't you know, I can feel it. And I would say there's an appearance of a tactile sensation of a screen that you're seemingly touching, and there's a seeming appearance of you with a hand and an arm reaching out and so on and so forth. But these are all appearances. For example, one could make the same argument with the appearance of the hand, arm, the sense of tactile touch, the sound of my voice, the seeming appearance of my face or the screen. The same argument can be made, but I'll just use the screen. So when you look at this screen, what we know scientifically is that suppose that the screen exists, then light waves are hitting the screen and they're bouncing off the screen, and there's also light waves coming out of the screen because most screens are backlit, and so these light waves then come at us and they hit our eyes, and they go through our eyes and hit the optic nerves in the back, or they're refracted by the various lenses in our eyes, but they hit the optic nerves in the back, and those optic nerves then start sending signals to our brain. Our brain then constructs, or rather reconstructs, the image based upon all those light wave signals, light wave particles and signals, electrical signals, and constructs that image and then projects it out in front of us, right where that screen should be located. And so we think we're looking at a screen, but in fact what we're looking at is the projection that, or an image that our mind has projected directly in front of us. So another way to say it is that we're simply looking at our mind. We're not looking at a screen, we're looking at our mind. And in fact, everything about us, everything we see, hear, anything we can touch, smell, taste, we're actually never in contact with anything out there. We're entirely ensconced or enveloped within our own minds. Everything we can see, hear, touch, taste, smell, even inwardly, anything that we can sensate or feel, such as a sensation of pain or pleasure, they're all projections of the mind. The mind and consciousness is where all this is occurring. So that's the point I want to make before I go back to the essay. So to leave off, the last sentence I had read was, the middle way is about loosening our conceptions or reifications, as they say, which is the way in which we solidify reality in our minds. In the West, since the time of Descartes, or possibly earlier, there's been a profound and pervasive conceptual split between the mind and body. I think, therefore I am, was his famous motto. So I'm going to skip a bunch of paragraphs, but I want to make a comment on what I just read. So in the West, we have this split between mind and body, but I would say that the split isn't so much mind, even though I wrote mind and body, it's about the world of our mind and everything out there, or what's in our minds versus what's not in our minds. And many of us tend to, and if we're sort of, if our worldview is undergirded by this conceptual split between what's in our minds or what's in our consciousness versus everything out there, then there's a tendency to say, well, I have thoughts and I have thoughts that occur in the mind, and then there's stuff out there. And these are two distinct realities, and they operate according to different rules. They operate according to different dynamics. Now, depending on the person, they may place things like feelings in one or the other category. For example, I think most of us can acknowledge that our thoughts arise in our mind and they dissipate. They come and they go. Now, with feelings, I would imagine that some people would say feelings are different from thoughts because feelings seem to have a life of their own and feelings seem to be occurring in my body. Yeah. And so such a person might say feelings are a little bit different. Whereas thoughts, I can let them go easily. Feelings, they're real. But I would say, no, that's not true, actually. Feelings also occur in mind. They occur in consciousness. And feelings have no characteristic that I can think of that are different than thoughts. They arise in consciousness and they dissipate in consciousness. And feelings tend to co-arise with thoughts, yeah? Certain thoughts trigger certain feelings. And so our thoughts almost co-create, our thoughts and our feelings almost co-create one another. A certain thought like, this world sucks, suddenly creates a tense feeling or depressed feeling maybe, and that depressed feeling then conjures more thoughts of like, yeah, don't you know the world is hard? Yeah, and then they kind of co-create one another. But if one could remove the thoughts, then the feelings would dissipate too. And likewise, if one could recognize the feelings as just transient, the thoughts would lose their solidity also. And anyway, but that conceptual split for most, that split arrives somewhere. So some people might say something like a physical ailment, such as, let's say, a migraine. A migraine is different from a thought because migraine's in the body, and I can find physical causes for the migraine. Yeah, and I can take physical pills to do away with migraines, so it must be different from a thought. But I would say that's actually not true. Migraines are no different than thoughts. Migraines are also experiences that are occurring entirely in mind. They occur entirely in consciousness. There may be physical correlates that we can point out to, but they're still occurring for us. Our experience of pain is occurring in mind. If there's no mind, there's no pain. If there's no consciousness, there's no pain. But all the characteristics that we attribute to thoughts can be attributed to pain. And in the next video, I'll likely make a comment about, like, for example, taking Excedrin for a migraine. Why is it that the physical cure, physical sort of antidote, seems to address the physical experience? Doesn't that almost prove that the cause is entirely physical? And I would say, no, that's not a proof at all. But in this video, I just want to stay focused on this idea that there's an unfortunate conceptual split between what's occurring in the mind and what's something out there. But my initial comments in this video were meant to address the attitude that even things that we think as out there, they may be out there. Even sounds, like the chirping of a bird, for example, it appears as if there's a bird. It appears as if the bird is making a bunch of chirping sounds. And yet our experience of the sound, our experience of seeing the bird isn't out there. It's still occurring in mind. And that, in fact, if one thinks about it, the entirety of our lives, from the moment we're born to the moment we die, there's nothing within that experience that occurs outside of the mind. And not only, okay, so that comment is a weak comment to say that there's nothing that it doesn't occur in the mind, but it's that the entirety of our experience, 100% of our experience, is occurring in mind. And so, let me get back to the essay here. Oh, so this conceptual split, right? And so, in some ways, this is what the Course in Miracles is saying, the quote from the earlier video. And this is also what the middle path would suggest. In both, there's a pointing toward a fundamental presumption we're making in thinking that one is different from the other. In other words, what occurs in the mind is different than something else out there, that we have convinced ourselves that there's something else that's occurring out there. But in fact, there's nothing occurring outside of mind for each of us. Okay, and then I talk about the pain occurring in the body. The experience of pain resides in the mind, not in the body. Body might be doing its thing, but our experience of pain occurs in the mind. It's a convincing story, for example, that physical illness is rooted in physical causes, but that just doesn't hold up under first-person empirical examination, which unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on one's perspective, isn't practiced in most medical science. In the Dharma tradition, there's a practice called vipassana. Vipassana translates to clear seeing, or sometimes insight. And within that tradition, we see that physical pain has the same nature as thoughts or feelings or inner sensations, or even our perceptions, our visual perceptions, our audio perceptions, our tactile perceptions, and so on, our olfactory perceptions and our gustatory perceptions. And and so I'm going to pause this because this video has gone on for 15 minutes already, and I'm going to pick up from this mentioning of vipassana.